And today on the episode, we are talking about how to better handle your emotional triggers in marriage.
So in a recent podcast episode, we covered emotional triggers and we received afterwards even more questions, more detail. How can I learn more about my own triggers? And not only that, but we received hundreds of comments of things that trigger you all in your relationship. So we thought we need to go a little bit deeper into this. So what we're going to cover today is your favorite movies. We're going to actually give you alternative storylines to those movies if they knew about triggers. That's going to be fun. The 3 parts to emotional triggers. And guess what? We are going to be announcing our second book. You all have been just supporting us so much, and we finally get to tell you the book title and all the pre-order bonuses, and we'll do that at the end.
And of course, we are live here, so if you're tuning in from Facebook or YouTube, there is a chat. Drop in the chat. Let us know you're listening. Say hello. And as we dive into this topic, let us know authentically what types of triggers have you been experiencing in your relationship. And as you type those in, we can see them in the chat here. You know, Jocelyn, for you, just being completely honest, before you knew about emotional triggers and what they are, what was your experience of them? Yeah,
so before I really knew about triggers, my own triggers, what triggered me and how I acted, I felt like I had no control. I felt like, however my partner, of course you in this relationship, but even past relationships, I didn't have control over my response. And so one way we like to define emotional trigger is when someone almost pokes you, little tickle, in a sensitive spot.
Not so much a tickle at times.
Right. It doesn't feel like a tickle. It feels more like a stab, right? But it's a poke in a sensitive spot emotionally. And it elicits a reaction, which we're going to talk about that. And so but without knowing about triggers, I felt like I had no control over my response to when I felt someone said something to me that I didn't like, that hurt my feelings. What about for you?
Yeah, and you know, triggers can actually happen in any relationship. And I think before I realized these happened, I could have friendships or coworkers or be in any conversation. You know what? It can be that person did something or said something to me that caused this uncomfortable feeling, possibly defensive. And in that moment, what happens is I feel like they did something that had me not feel good.
Yeah.
So I don't want to put myself in that position.
Yeah, like
I
you can
don't
retract.
want to be around them. Yeah. You know, the analogy I think of is if you walked into the kitchen and every time you put your hand on the stove, it's like you burned your hand. Well, eventually you'd say, I don't even want to go into the kitchen.
Yeah.
So that is what an emotional trigger can do, is that anytime you get into a conversation or you're with somebody, it's like, oh, that person has me feel defensive. They say something that is disrespectful to me, or I don't like that. So you just don't even want to go around that.
And here's what's sneaky about triggers is, and we're going to go into the 3 parts in just a few minutes, but they feel real. Meaning it really feels like your partner or that person is doing something to hurt you. And it really does feel real. So the first thing is to recognize, oh, if I'm actually triggered here right now, maybe this isn't reality. Maybe it's the reaction that we're going to go into in a minute.
You know, that's like next level. So the first thing is it does feel like something you have no control over.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest problem in a sense with triggers, not realizing that you have them or they're coming up, is it feels like I have no control over that.
Yeah.
So you're totally disempowered. But if you can start to see these triggers as your own, all of a sudden, that is a place that you do have control over.
Well,
because here's the key.
Okay.
You do not have control over what anyone else really does.
Give it to me. Let's say it again.
You don't have control over what people do. You don't even have control over how life actually goes. You cannot control life 100%. And maybe you've heard this before. What you do have control over
is yourself.
Is your response.
Yep.
And your triggers.
Yeah.
So in a sense, that brings you back the power. It brings you back the ability to respond and not be at the effect of what other people may or may not be doing. Because ultimately, here's one more big thing.
Okay, give it to us.
All of your experience of life happens within you.
Yep.
It may seem like all of your senses are outward focused, which they are. You know, you see someone do something, you hear them say something to you, But that's not happening outside of you.
Yeah.
Where that's actually happening is within yourself. So someone else could be listening to the same conversation, maybe with your partner. Your partner does the same thing. They're going to have a different experience.
Right.
So that means that it is within you. So
That's
your
why it's a
emotional
personal
triggers,
trigger.
That's right.
Like, I could say to you, hey, did you do the dishes a certain way? And it doesn't trigger you. But when your partner does, it triggers you. And here's the thing. Really let this sink in. People make rash, big choices from triggers. Think about how many people end relationships, end a marriage because of triggers, and they aren't recognizing that it was a trigger that they could have worked through. Or they say or do things they really don't mean, and we're going to get into that. So,
But we got that education in school, though.
Oh, no. There was no Emotional Triggers
Oh,
101.
really? Oh, shoot.
That's the big thing we talk about all the time. You hear us say over and over, we learn math, we learn science, we learn the arts, but we don't learn about emotional intelligence, and we don't learn about our triggers. And so you can walk around life, your coworkers trigger you, your family triggers you, your partner triggers you, and that's when, if you don't know it is a trigger within you, like you said, it really does feel like other people are doing it to you.
And triggers are happening everywhere, even in movies, right? Some of your favorite movies.
So let's do something fun before we get into more of like the actionable teaching material. We want to do just a fun activity and actually go into alternate storylines to movies you love if they knew about triggers. I mean, we love movies, you guys. We're like movie buffs. We miss the movie theater big time during quarantine. All right, so let's go into some of these movies. First one, Crazy Stupid Love. This was a movie that like you laughed at and you also got sad about. It kind of had those mixed emotions. And this couple in the picture, they were triggered. There was a time in their relationship, in the story, where they weren't feeling as much romance anymore. They didn't feel appreciated. They didn't feel seen. Their effort went down, and that triggered each other. And rather than talking about, hey, I'm feeling pain, I'm feeling disconnected, I don't feel I matter to you anymore, they let that trigger run the show, and they end up
led them
separating.
to living in separate places, him living in an apartment,
Yes.
Steve Carell's character meeting Ryan Gosling and becoming like a player.
So the alternate storyline is if in that moment where they really just revealed that they were both triggered, they could have had an incredible year together. They could have rejuvenated their relationship. They could have gone on vacation together.
And that's how we want your relationship to go now. That wouldn't have made for a great movie.
Yeah.
Great movies come from big, huge emotional triggers, and then you react. So that's fun entertainment, but we want this to be in your life, in real life, so that you wouldn't have to have that time where you lived in an apartment by yourself.
Yeah, and became like a male, like he kind of went off the chain with partying a little bit. Okay, next one, Marriage Story. This pretty much should have been called The Divorce Story. Now, the acting was incredible. You might have heard us say this before, but the movie was really well done. However, so this couple ends up getting divorced because she didn't recognize she was triggered by the fact that she didn't feel she had a voice. She didn't feel that he was including her in his mission and what he was up to. She felt like she was in the passenger seat or behind him. And again, rather than revealing that she was triggered, she goes down this path and they have an intense divorce. How do you think that could have gone differently?
Could have gone way differently. Rather than keep that trigger in, which we will talk about, it can be reactive, but your response to a trigger can also be repressive in nature. And this was a great example of it being very repressed.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, an emotional trigger is going to come out. You can only hold it down so long.
Yeah.
It may be a few years. In this case, they go to counseling, and then there's like a blow up where really they do more damage to each other. They do damage to the relationship with her sister.
And the children.
It impacts their child. And ultimately, their life goes a totally different way.
Yeah.
And so, how they could have handled this differently is Scarlett Johansson's character could have early on said, hey, Adam, even though that's Adam Driver's character, you know, you are the one that's always directing the plays, and I want to be more of a key role in that.
Yeah.
I get the feeling that I'm being left out, that
Or
I'm
that I
not
don't
being
matter as much.
appreciated, and that triggers me.
Yes.
She could have just done that. Once again, wouldn't have made for, I guess, a great entertaining movie, but we want this to be implemented into your life so that you don't go down the path and you have an alternate ending from any kind of
And we
divorce.
do see your comments and questions over here, so we will come back to the questions that are being asked. Love that. Third movie, I mean, if you don't love this movie, you're not a human being, and it is The Notebook, okay? I cry every single time. You know, everyone loves the ending because they do come back together. They have this beautiful long life together. However, they could have gotten even more life together because there was this moment where, you know, he gets triggered by her dad, and her dad seems to think he's kind of less than the family, not worthy of her as a partner, and he overhears that and gets triggered. It triggers in him unworthiness, not good enoughness. I'm below her. I don't deserve her love. That gets triggered in him, and rather than recognizing his trigger, he ends up breaking up with her, and they end up having at least a couple years apart.
Oh man,
how could that have gone?
What could the alternate ending could have been in this one? Storyline. He could have said, you know what, from what your dad said really triggered me. You know, it triggered that maybe I'm not good enough, that I don't have a good enough job to support your dreams. But if he would have just shared that as a trigger, he could have got in her world and not projected that that's how she felt, where she could have said, hey, I totally hear you and I love you.
Yes.
I love how we feel playful and we live life as it comes to us.
Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm in the movie.
So he could have shared the trigger, and she could have told him and eased his feeling about his unworthiness and not being enough for her.
Yes.
And they could have continued and had many years of life together. So once again, wouldn't have been entertaining.
Yeah.
However, we want your life to go that way, hence why we're going to be heading into the 3 parts of a trigger. But before that, why don't we hear from some relationship coaches on their advice to conflict resolution?
Conflict resolution advice is never let a good fight go to waste.
What was this fight teaching us? What is it the highest good in this conflict for us?
Ask really good questions.
And then listen to your partner.
Is respect, because we believe that a conflict will never give us permission to disrespect one another as human beings.
Making sure that your partner feels heard.
Separate from each other, to take some time to pray and reflect.
And then to come back together to lovingly communicate with no blame and express forgiveness.
We love that advice, and I love how diverse it is from everyone. I especially love the remark about how conflict can actually give you a beautiful lesson. And that's one thing that we'll talk more about in our book. Again, that's coming at the end, talking about the book. But let's get into the 3 parts to the trigger, right? Because many of you are asking questions like, what do we recognize? Like, how do we become more aware of the triggers? And that's what it's all about. It's about having the awareness. So you've got to know that there are 3 parts to an emotional trigger. And the first part is the triggering event. So you're having a normal day. Maybe you wake up, you're having a good morning, you're drinking your coffee, and then all of a sudden, either a remark is made. So triggering events can be words or things said. It can be a tone of voice.
Yeah, I mean, literally, here you are just living your life. It could be in the home, which in quarantine, people are mostly in their home. It could be anywhere, on the walk with the dog. It could be out at your office with coworkers, but with your partner, you could be cooking dinner. And then here it is. Something is either said, something is done, it's a tone of voice, or even a facial expression.
Ooh, yeah.
And we'll get more into that. And then so all of a sudden, that particular event elicits or creates a rise of emotion within you. This is what we call getting triggered.
Exactly.
And it comes from some event.
And what you realize, right, is like afterwards, you realize, oh, that triggering event wasn't that threatening. And in fact, if anyone else experienced the same thing, like again, I could say to him, hey, would you mind putting your phone away for dinner? And it would trigger him coming from me, which we would discuss why. But if someone else, a friend, said that, it wouldn't matter. So what's interesting is triggering events can be different from your partner than coming from anyone else.
Well, I'll give you another example then of the same words being used can now be the tone, right?
Yes.
So where you had just said to me, hey, do you mind putting the phone away?
Right. I could have instead said
But the tone could sound more like, can you put the phone away?
Gosh, do you have to boss me around?
See, so all of a sudden, it's not just the words or something that's said. It could be the tone even. So that event, there's some event. And actually, since we are live, why don't you type in the chat and Jocelyn can look over here. Are there any particular events that you have had recently that cause and elicit an emotion in you?
Yeah.
Again, it could be something your partner says, something that they did, something that they did not do. That could be a big one. A tone of voice, anything like that. There could be one that's, for me personally, sometimes it's even when I feel like I didn't get the same opportunity. So for us, a little bit differently, we do these live shows. We might be on a podcast, and to be completely honest, an action that you might take, which sometimes comes up for me.
All right, let's hear it.
Even if you get on like a great run and great energy on a topic, I might start to feel that I'm not getting as much time to talk as you.
Okay.
So now that's an event, right? So that's something that you did that has me feel, which now we're going to get into the second part. It elicits an emotion. That event causes me to feel like defensive or that I'm not contributing as much.
And it is subtle. So the first thing is, like I said a few minutes ago, it feels real to you. So one of you asked, like, how do you recognize your triggers more? How do you interrupt them? The first step is you have to become aware of what are your triggering events so that you can let your partner know, hey, when you do that or when you say that, it triggers me. And then, of course, you want to go deeper into looking like, why does that trigger you? Now, that's a whole other topic. We could spend an hour just talking on.
Do we have any people that have put in any events?
Let's see. All right. Okay, here we go. We got one. When my husband comes home from work and isn't happy to see me, that could be triggering.
Let me say something on that. So I love this. Get a little bit more specific. What is the action or is it words? So you say, he's not happy to see you. Is that in the tone of voice? Is that in something that he says?
Is it that he's on his phone?
Doesn't give you a hug or a kiss or goes right to the phone or the couch?
Yeah.
What exactly? This is really good. What exactly is the event?
That's good. Another one says bottling up or seeming distant. So that's another one. What does seeming distant look like? Does that mean that they're just quiet and they're on their phone? Like, you got to get the tangible details. Otherwise, here's the thing. If we don't get the details and we try to share it with our partner, they won't know what to do differently. They'll be like, what do you mean I seem distant? I don't seem distant to myself. And so you got to get more of the detail of what's the actual triggering event.
And even more so, we talked about in the beginning, right? It does seem like something that's out of your control. And that's the key here. Because when something's out of your control, you disconnect yourself from it.
Yeah.
When you want to do something about a trigger, you have to get specific on what the event is for you. So really good things. I think we move on to the second part of a trigger now. Part 2 is you have the triggered emotion. Now, this is really big, too, because we said the event elicits an emotion in you. Now, it could be, and many men say things maybe like, you're being emotional. Well, you have to get that it's not just this general feeling of emotion. You want to get that emotion is something specific. So it's not this general thing, I just have this whirlwind of emotion. Emotions fall into multiple categories, right? It can be like from emotional intelligence, you can have disgust, you could have fear, you could have love, you can have sadness, you can have happiness, and pretty much all emotions will be a subset of those categories.
And what's powerful about it is, as a human being, you might not ever escape feeling the triggered emotion. That's not the goal here. It's not to all of a sudden be like, so what, I'm not supposed to ever have any kind of emotional reaction? That's probably not achievable for at least a while of practice. It's, can you become aware? And to be honest, when I talk to people, and this took me years to develop, years, you guys, they aren't even aware of what they're feeling. Like, if I were to ask you when you're triggered, you would just be so not present with yourself that you can't even.
I just feel too much.
I'm just mad at you. So you have to become in your body and become present to really identify what you're feeling and where are you feeling it in your body. And
what am I feeling? If you can give a word to the emotion that you're feeling. I'm feeling defensive. I'm feeling jealous. I'm feeling disrespected. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling, on the other side, joyful, positive expectation, anticipation. But usually in the triggers, we're talking about things that are like the disgust, the distrust, the unhappiness, the frustration.
And when you develop this emotional mastery and this mastery over your triggers, you'll be able to notice the triggering event, be like, oh, okay, that thing happened. I know I'm triggered because I'm feeling an emotion. All right, let me feel it, breathe it. And rather than immediately taking it out on your partner, we'll talk about that third step in a minute, you just are present with your emotions and you're just taking a breath. And you might even take a minute before you communicate it to your partner because you want to say it in a calm, kind way. And so you can develop the ability to feel the emotion, be with your emotion internally and not project it outwards right away.
Yeah, and just one thing to add here, what's really happening is that emotion is just a set of biochemistry. An event happened, and this emotion is really there because you gave some additional meaning to the event that happened.
That's good. Mm-hmm.
And so when you have meaning to it, your partner's on your phone, so immediately what your brain is saying because of maybe past history, they do not respect me, they're not giving me enough love and attention, and it's that really thought that then elicits some biochemistry, some hormones that then flood your body.
Yep.
So that's what's happening, and this happens really, really fast.
Right.
What's happening in that moment is that biochemistry is, in a sense, hijacking the circuitry in your brain. You're actually literally in another part of your brain. So when your partner says, that's illogical, that doesn't make sense, well, that's in a sense true because it's not logical. It's not in the logic part of the brain. You're now more in the emotional, or when it's really impactful, you're actually in a triggered response. You're in a fight, flight, or freeze response, which is a totally different part of the emotion. So should we go into the third aspect
All right,
now?
so there you are. You're feeling what you're feeling, and then the third part is?
And this is happening so fast. The third part is the triggered behavior. So this is happening without your really decision making.
Until you become you have more mastery.
That's right.
You want to build mastery over this.
So that biochemistry happens, and now your body is used to, well, when this floods my body, I'm now outside the logic brain, so take this action. And it can be things that do not serve your relationship.
They're destructive. They're not usually like, oh, I'm triggered, I'm going to say I love you. Or I'm triggered, so I'm going to give you a kiss. No,
That's where you want to go.
It's like, I'm feeling my emotion, I'm triggered, so now I'm going to yell at you. I'm going to call you a name. I'm going to storm out of the room. I'm going to make a passive-aggressive statement at you. It's usually not not usually. It's always not nice unless you bring awareness to this. So we're talking about if you're unconscious, if you're unaware of the triggered 3 steps, it won't be very nice.
Yeah, and this is a certain level of now survival for yourself.
Yeah.
And you are in a different part of the brain. Now, a lot of people think, oh, okay, I can see the reactionary part, like Jocelyn just talked about, where you are more outgoing, it's a little more harsh. But you also can have triggered behaviors that are much more repressive. So these are just as triggered behaviors where you pull away, you might leave the room,
get quiet.
You shut down, you get quiet, you say nothing, you turn your back to them. And this is more like the triggered behavior you see in The Marriage Story, where Scarlett Johansson's character just repressed it all. And that just builds resentment. It's an avoiding feeling the emotion in the short term, but in the long term, it really does have big effects.
Oh, big effects. That's what I said at the beginning, is people can make big decisions in the relationship, like either choose to end it or withdraw completely emotionally. I've talked to several people this week on coaching calls, and they weren't aware that there was a trigger that happened maybe a month ago or so, and their defense mechanism, their triggered behavior, was to withdraw emotionally. And so it can be equally as destructive, both the reactive, as you talked about, but also the repressive behavior when you're triggered. So, Aaron,
go
ahead.
Yeah, this is a time where a lot of partners would say to the other, that doesn't make sense. It's illogical that you made that connection. Oh, I did this, but that doesn't make any sense for why you reacted that way.
Right.
Here's the thing. Your partner being triggered or yourself being triggered, you're not in the logic part of the brain. So in a sense, you're right, it's not logical. However, here's the key. If you track the emotion, defensiveness, jealousy, resentment, the triggered behavior makes exact sense to the emotion.
Yeah.
So if you look at when you get defensive, you're going to do a very predictable action. Your behavior is going to be very predictable to the emotion that you feel. So if you do feel jealous, if you do feel, let's say, resentment, you do feel disrespected, your trigger behavior will be very predictable and logical as to why you took that action.
Yeah. Well, again, without awareness. Because here's what's possible. So several of you have asked things like, well, then what do we do about this? How do I not take those same actions? How do I not keep doing those same triggered behaviors? It's all awareness. How quickly can you catch yourself? The easiest way, I'd say there's two of the easiest ways to catch yourself in the triggers is one, again, be in your body and catch yourself feeling the emotion, or catch yourself when you're in the action. So for example, I had a lot of triggered behaviors to break from my upbringing of kind of like lashing out emotionally. So when we're in a disagreement, I catch myself if I start doing those triggered behaviors and I go, hold on, I'm going to take a breath. And I say, I'm going to choose a different behavior right now. It takes time. It takes commitment. You're not going to be perfect at this overnight. It's just how quickly can you catch yourself in the triggered behavior or the triggered emotion. And then here is what is powerful. Imagine this. The next time you're triggered, you catch yourself, you stop yourself from doing the destructive triggered behaviors, and you reveal your trigger to your partner.
Oh, boy.
Let's talk about this. Imagine you go to your partner and you're vulnerable enough to say, hey, I know I just started to talk to you that way, and I realized that's actually my triggered behavior. And I realized the triggering event was this. You know, you being on your phone after work. Or,
and that has me feel this particular emotion.
Yes. So that, I mean, that in itself
especially if you do
powerful.
not blame your partner. You do not say, when you did that, it made me feel disrespected, so that's why, and I rationalize and I justify my behavior. No. Take ownership. As we said in the beginning, your entire experience of life is happening within you. That is the only place it ever happens. So you can feel empowered that you don't just react to things, your partner, what they say, by knowing these steps. What is the event? And guess what? When you know the triggered event, you can also come up with agreements.
Yes.
Ooh,
well, don't
now
spoil
we're linking,
it.
Now we're linking
that's next one.
Linking to other.
We're making this a 3-part series for you all, and I actually see another question that's saying, well, how do I move the feelings? Like, how do I shift those emotions, the negative feelings, to feeling more positive? We're going to cover that. We're actually making this a 3-part series because triggers are such a big deal. So we're going to do an episode on how to handle when your partner's triggered. So like, how can you respond differently when your partner's triggered? And then we're going to do another episode on what you can do emotionally when you're feeling triggered. So answering the question about like, what can you do to shift your feelings and not stay stuck in that triggered emotion?
Yeah. So for now, just see if you can place yourself in what is the triggered event, what is the triggered emotion, and what is the triggered behavior. See that you can catch yourself in each one of the phases and know that this is a place for you to take more power back, feel like you're more in control, and you're ultimately going to serve the relationship.
Absolutely. So those are the 3 parts to the emotional trigger. We'll summarize them at the end, but it's time for something exciting.
Well, on the previous episode, we had you write in the chat as to what the title of our new book would be. And so now, who is excited? Are you just as excited as us to hear what the title of the brand new book is? Can we get a drum roll, please?
Are you ready?
And the title of the new book is The Argument Hangover.
Come on! All right, that you might even wonder, like, what is the argument hangover? Well, you can start to already extract what that means, but the argument hangover is that period of time after a disagreement that lasts all the way up until you reconnect emotionally. And in that argument hangover, it kind of feels like a food or alcohol hangover. You feel lethargic, you feel kind of hurt by what they said or how they said it, you feel guilty for how you acted. You just ultimately feel disconnected. And here's the thing, the argument hangover can either last 3 minutes, 3 hours, 3 days, 3 months. Some of you have way too long of argument hangovers where you're disconnected.
And we know that you can relate to, at some point in the conflict, having a thought where you say, what is it that we're even arguing about? I have no idea how this started, but I'm just getting even more mad. That's the thing about the argument hangover period. It is not really about the thing that's caused the argument, because what you say, the actions you take, the things that you don't do, your tone of voice, all of the triggers escalate this period to where you do more damage to the relationship than the initial disagreement. And you know what the thing is? There's typically only 2 or 3 things that are always recurring.
Yeah.
And that puts you into these argument hangovers where they escalate even more than they really need to.
Absolutely. But it doesn't have to keep going that way, and you're not alone. We talk to couples all day long, and conflict resolution and communication is something that everyone really could get better at, because we didn't have that in school, right? There was no conflict resolution 101 or communication 101, so you're not alone. And that's why this book is a modern guide. This is not full of cliches like communication is the key to relationship, which we're all like, yeah, we know that. How do you actually communicate, or how do you actually resolve conflicts faster? So in this book, you're actually going to have step-by-step strategies for before conflict, how to prevent them, during conflict so you cause less damage, and then also strategies for after a conflict so that you can resolve it and repair it emotionally faster.
And you know what? We're really excited about this piece. This is brand new. We are going to give you what your communication personality type actually is, so you know the dynamics as to why you communicate to your partner the way you do, so that you can be more connected more often. And guess what? You can start to disappear the argument hangover and get connected even faster and keep that momentum together in your relationship.
Absolutely. The goal is that you don't have argument hangovers. But we thought it's a fun title to describe that period, and we're going to give you the cure for that gnarly hangover.
So if you know this book is exactly for you, then you can actually go to theargumenthangover.com right now. This is it, the official launch, and you can pre-order your copy right now by theargumenthangover.com. And this book will actually be released in February. It'll be shipped to you. And right now, why you do not want to wait is because we have these bonuses for you, over $200 worth of bonuses that you can get to start to work on this argument hangover period now.
Yeah, so we wanted to make it really worth your while to order it now. So not only are you getting the book, but $200 of bonuses. So the first bonus is a mini course so that you can actually start the course right away. And it's going to be 4 modules for you to get tools and strategies. You'll have us on video going into communication and conflict resolution strategies. I'm telling you, these will be implementable skills, not just philosophies, not just theories, implementable things that you can do. So you can get access to that course by pre-ordering now. We also have a guide to debrief after a conflict. So imagine being able to sit down together and repair it faster, get to a place of understanding faster. So we actually have prompts in that guide, for example, figuring out like what was the original trigger? What could we have done differently? What are our agreements for times of conflict? So you get access to that. That's $47 value. Then you also get, tell them about the Valentine's Day event.
It's going to be the largest online Valentine's Day event that for you and your spouse. There's going to be a chef, there's going to be live music. We're going to dive into even more about the argument hangover. It will be on the official launch of the actual book. You will not want to miss that. You will get a ticket for that event, a $127 value for free. You can join us on that event. So if you're like, oh my gosh, I need all of these things, primarily because we do not want you to have your argument hangovers go longer than they need to, and we want you to be able to learn from these conflicts, not have them disconnect you. So if you're thinking, okay, I'm ready, go to theargumenthangover.com, and what you're going to do is actually, in this field right here, click on your favorite retailer and go and open up another window, get your pre-order copy, and what you do is actually just take your receipt number, come back to this page here, put in your name, email, and receipt number, hit submit, and you will be able to access these bonuses now.
And here's the thing, don't wait, don't go say, okay, yeah, I'll pre-order that. You're going to get busy. the kids are gonna need something. So go now, right? Pre-order it, get access to these bonuses right away, get the course, get the guide, get your ticket to the Valentine's Day event so that you already have it ordered. Save yourself wondering or adding another to-do list item. So go today, grab your copy, get access to the bonuses. You're going to get an email with that right away. I'm so excited to tell everyone the title.
Let's give them the book and the URL one more time. It is theargumenthangover.com. Honestly, this book is so important.
Yeah.
Because when you shorten the argument hangover and you actually decrease the escalation and you don't have it be as hurtful, you become master communicators. You learn more about each other, and actually you become the power couple you know that you are meant to be. So go ahead and grab your copy, and this has been an exciting episode and show to launch this book.
And tell us when you pre-order it. Like, we want to know. Tag us in your posts. We know some of you already are saying that you're grabbing your copy, so thank you so much for that support. So let's summarize today. It's been an exciting episode. So first we talked about how there are 3 parts to the emotional triggers. There's the triggering event, there's the triggered emotion, and then there's the triggered behavior. And the goal is to become aware for yourself of all 3 parts of that trigger, so that you can choose something different.
And this is such an important topic for relationships, for the health of relationships. And so we're going to make this into a 3-part series, right?
We are, absolutely. So the next episode, we'll be going into what to do when your partner is triggered, how you can respond to your partner's triggers better. And then the next one about yourself. How do you handle your emotions better? So we're going to go more into, like, what would you actually do to shift your emotion from negative to positive and take different behaviors. Today's been fun.
The argument hangover is going to be the best tool that you could get for this as well. So we are so happy to announce this pre-launch right here on this show. Thank you so much for being on with us.
Yeah, we had a blast with you all, and we'll talk to you on the next episode.